talk about how to manage or anticipate or work with consumer behavior during these disruptive times. And the one thought I had as I was thinking about this panel yesterday was that my own country just went through the most disruptive possible experience when someone used marketing techniques to supplant one of the most famous and probably capable politicians in the United States, but that didn't matter because the consumer responded to the marketing message of Donald Trump for good or bad, and it certainly has made a lot of us nervous with anticipation to see where things go. So that's an example of disruptive marketing in another way, and I think an opportunity for us to reflect on how the consumer marketing is merging with politics. With that thought in mind, what we're going to do, we're just going to have a few minutes up here and to bring the day to a close. I'm hoping that our panelists will reflect on what's gone on today, reflect on innovation in Indonesia, however you would like to express it. And I think what we'll do is start with Gordon Hewitt and see what thoughts you guys have been intimately involved in the last 2 days. And the kind of stuff that SIXCAP is doing is absolutely remarkable. And maybe you could help us, and perhaps also, Gordon, feel free to direct a question to Shiying if you'd like to do that, and give us your view of how the day.
She normally directs a lot of questions to me, so this will be a wonderful way of relocating power in the system, I can tell you. Can I be disruptive? Just towards the end of the day, since it's been 2 days on disruption, a couple of suggested word changes here. This is not about meeting the needs of the 21st century. This is responding to the powers and the new freedoms of 21st century consumers. Meeting needs sounds a little bit like old game to me. That's number one. Let's talk of that. Number two, there's been a lot of talk today, and you heard it from government ministers too, about the fourth industrial revolution. It is important, but I think it may be starting from the wrong position. You just asked Nadim. The real issue is this is the second or third internet revolution, and that's what's causing the industrial revolution. If we start with the industrial revolution, we still have a model of industry that's kind of 19th century. We have to ask what's the second or third revolution taking place in the evolution of the internet. And I'll give you 2 examples just to get the debate going. Going back to this idea of freedoms and powers. Number one, we hear it all the time, Lynn, is that the second or third evolution of internet has moved the position of consumers from outside to right into the center of the value chain. They are no longer receivers, they are, as we all say now, co-creators of value. And a lot of firms just don't get this. They still use traditional marketing techniques to ask people what they want. And so if you think of consumers via internet power as being in the center of the dialogue, for firms who say we're here, and I hear this all the time, we have relationships, we sell solutions, all this nice fancy talk, they've got to come to terms, these are not things you deliver like products and services. The basic consumer power has changed. The second point I'd make is that it's caused a huge asymmetrical shift in who is knowledgeable in the system. You know, when I grew up, the supplier always knew more than the customer. Now we're finding the opposite is the case. And so anyone here, including myself, by the way, who is a business based on selling so-called superior knowledge, professional services, and so on, any kind of business that trades on the fact that in real time they know more than the customer will actually revise their position entirely. This is a time when the customer is not just king by monetary means, they're king by intellectual means. And I think that shift is the thing that we've got to begin to adjust to. End of story.
Interesting. How do you apply that in real life, Shiying, when you apply these kind of ideas about catering to or changing the whole way you think about customers, which is really what Gordon is saying? How do you apply that in the real world? How do you actually do that?
I think we live in very interesting times now. I mean, this is the first time where we're so connected to one another than any time in the world. We're connected to each other, interconnected with the rest of the world. Just to give an example, like I read somewhere that the telephone took about 75 years to reach 50 million people. But, I mean, the Pokemon game if some of you would have been familiar with, which is the digital mobile game, took less than 10 days to reach the same number of people. So I think the application of the world that we live in right now is really having a very quick adaptability to change, understanding the technology advances, how social media, how digitization, how Internet of Things, all these huge trends, how they are causing, tremendous opportunities for players in the market, for marketers, for companies, and for consumers like ourselves. How do we use these opportunities to our own advantage? I think that's the real key takeaway, to be able to adapt to all these changes fast enough.
I can't resist, Farina, you helped get Jokowi elected. And, how do you, after all that experience in the corporate world and spending a lot of time abroad and in a lot of great corporations, you came back and you were part of a successful social media effort, however you want to describe it, that ended up with a pretty disruptive guy as president of Indonesia, somebody nobody would have ever predicted through traditional means would have become president. What do you think because I think that's part of a trend globally. Right. What do you think these kinds of trends in the world of communication and politics are teaching us about what's also happening in business? And what's happening in the world of the internet.
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
I think so. You have to talk first.
No, this is a very interesting discussion so far, right? And I must say, Gordon, your point about customers are king, I have to kind of, they are important. I just don't find it to be as important anymore because, if we so I was part of a company called BlackBerry. I don't know if everybody remember that company before.
Anybody remember BlackBerry?
And if you guys remember, something like this thing called the Apple iPhone completely blew BlackBerry out of the water. And if we let the customers become king and actually ask them what they want, we will never find, nobody will come up with the iPhone. We'll probably have, BlackBerry with a longer battery life. Because that's what we talked about in BlackBerry. It's like, how do you, increase the lifespan of the battery, right? And I think if people would come up with transport solutions, they would never come up with Uber or Gojek. They would probably come up with faster cars or something like that. I'm not that creative, I guess. But it's really not just about what the customers want, because I agree where they do know. And these days we talk about in the startup world, in my company, we do this thing called customer development. It's no longer just product development. You develop the product together with the customers, so you get constant feedback. But for me, even more basic than that is that sometimes when we, my real life experience have been in, starting a business in Indonesia, working with a campaign and starting this company, is that we tend to forget the most important part of the game, and that's basically ourselves, and by ourselves meaning our team, our people, right? And without the proper talent and without the proper team to sort of like meet these customers' needs, or even understanding what to ask questions with the customers, you're not going to get to the right solution or bring the idea to market. Ideas are, you can come up with ideas, but the execution of things, especially in a market like Indonesia, is not, I would say that plays more of an importance. And, because we don't have the luxury, I guess, to, have tremendous amount of talent or skills that you can cherry pick people, and I find that's one of the biggest constraints. And if your people know how to talk to consumers and customers and actually, work together with them, and I've heard the words co-creation being thrown around multiple times, then I guess you can come up with the great products to disrupt the industry.